Today, I want to talk about a man with a genuinely big vision, not a fantasy, an actual clear picture of the business, the family legacy, the ministry he is building toward, who looks at the actual step in front of him today and feels something close to contempt for how small it is. The cold email that feels beneath the size of what he is building, the 5 minutes of prayer that seems insultingly short next to the spiritual life he imagines himself having someday. The single unremarkable set at the gym, the one client, the one page written, none of it matching the scale of the vision running in his head. He does not want the step, he wants the leap, the moment that finally looks as big as the picture he's been carrying, and every small, ordinary task in between feels like a delay he is being forced to tolerate. I want to confront to that feeling directly because scripture has a specific pointed question for exactly this posture. Zechariah 4 verse 10. Who dares despise the day of small things? This was written to a specific group of people rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem after it had been destroyed. And the new foundation they had just laid was, by every visible measure, unimpressive next to the grandeur of the original temple that used to stand there. Some of the older men who remember the temple, who remember the first temple, actually wept when they saw how small the new foundation looked. And into that exact discouragement, God asks a pointed question. Who dares despise it? Despise is a strong word, and it is the correct word for what it is actually happening, for what is actually happening when a man refuses to take a small step in front of him because it feels beneath the vision he is carrying. This is not humility about your own limitations. It is, in a most literal biblical sense, contempt aimed at the exact thing God is asking you to do today. I think this shows up most often in men who are actually capable of the big vision, which is what makes it so easy to miss in yourself. A man with no real ambition rarely despises small steps. He simply doesn't take them, and there is no internal conflict about it. It is the man who can genuinely see the size of what he is building, who feels the sting of the gap most sharply, and that sting is exactly what curdles into contempt if he isn't careful. Not laziness, but a kind of wounded pride that the work in front of him doesn't yet look like the picture in his head. Here is the other half of this that most men get backwards. The problem is rarely too much vision and too little action. It is usually vision and action that have quietly come unplugged from each other, steps with no vision attached, or vision with no steps underneath it. Proverbs 29 verse 18. Where there is no revelation, people cast off restraint. Some translations render this, where there is no vision, the people perish. Either way, the point is the same. Vision is not decoration sitting on top of a discipline. It is the thing that makes the discipline bearable in the first place. A man taking small and glamorous steps with no clear picture of where it leads will abandon that step the first week it stops feeling good because nothing is holding it in place except a mood that was always going to fade. This is why the vision has to be concrete, not just a warm feeling you carry around. Habakkuk 2 verses 2 and 3. Write down the revelation and make it plain on tablet so that a herald may run with it. For the revelation awaits an appointed time. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay. Write it down, make it plain, not a vague ambition floating somewhere in the back of your mind, something concrete enough that a runner could carry at full speed without losing the message. And notice the second half of the instruction. Because It corrects the exact impatience we started this episode naming. The vision awaits an appointed time. It will not arrive on your schedule just because you've grown tired of the small steps. Though it linger, wait for it. So waiting is not a flaw in the plan, it is written into the plan. I think most men do not settle permanently into one failure mode here. They swing between both, sometimes in the same week. Monday he is grinding through tasks with no vision in view at all, busy, exhausted, unable to say why any of it matters if you stopped him and asked. By Thursday, worn down by 3 days of steps that felt meaningless, he swings to he swings the other direction, fantasizing about the big leap, the shortcut, the version of the plan where he skips ahead to the part that finally looks like the vision, abandoning the actual step in front of him because it never felt connected to anything bigger to begin with. Neither posture survives contact with a real timeline. Steps with no vision run out of reasons to continue. Vision with no steps never leaves the imagination. And here is the reframe that I think resolves the tension between them instead of just telling you to try harder at both. Luke 16 verse 10. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little also be dishonest with much. The small steps is not a lesser talk standing between you and the real work. It is the real work in its current appropriate size, and it is specifically how trust for the larger vision gets built. Not as a hoop to jump through on the way to something better, as the actual mechanism. This changes what the small step is for. You are not enduring today's unremarkable task because you have to get through it before the real vision starts. You are doing today's tasks because this is what is being trusted with the vision that actually looks like from the inside this week at this size. There is no version of the big thing that skips this stage. There never was. I think about this in terms of what actually gets entrusted to a man over time. Nobody hands a 20-year vision to a man who has not yet proven faithful with a 20-minute task. That is not an arbitrary gatekeeping rule. It is simply what trust looks like when it is built honestly instead of granted on potential alone. The small step is the only evidence anyone, including you, actually has that the vision is more than a feeling you carry around. Everything else is just still talk. Everything else is still just talk until the step gets taken. So here is the practice. And it requires holding two things at once instead of picking whichever feels easier this week. First, write the vision down. Plainly, the way Habakkuk instructs, not a mood, an actual sentence you could hand someone else and have them understand exactly what you're building towards. Keep it somewhere you will actually see it, not buried in a note you wrote once and never opened again. Second, identify today's actual step, the one thing in front of you right now, and do it without content, treating it as the day of small things Zechariah refused to let anyone despise, not as an obstacle between you and the part that finally feels big enough. And when the step feels pointless, and the vision feels like it's taking longer than it should, go back to the promise instead of a mood. Galatians 6 verse 9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if you do not give up. Proper time, not your time. The harvest is coming on a schedule that has never once been the same as your patience level. And giving up in month 11 of a 12-month process is still giving up, even if it feels like exhaustion instead of quitting. Hebrews 6 verse 12 puts the two ingredients together in one sentence. And I want you to notice neither one is optional. Imitate those who, through faith and patience, inherit what has been promised. Faith without patience is a man who has vision but abandons the small steps the moment they get boring. Patience without faith is a man taking steps with no idea why, grinding without direction until he quits from sheer meaninglessness. You need both held together on the same day for as many days as it takes. Notice the word imitate in that verse. Not admire from a distance, not feel inspired by, imitate. An active instruction to copy the specific pattern of people who held faith and patience together long enough to actually inherit the promise rather than treating the outcome as a nice story that happened to someone else. The men Hebrews is pointing you toward were not extraordinary in some way you don't have access to. They simply refused to let go of either half of the pattern. On the days it would have been easier to drop one and keep only the other. I want to leave you with the same question scripture asked the men standing in front of that unimpressive foundation, weeping for the temple it used to be. Who dares despise the day of small things? Not the man with no vision. He was never at risk of despising it because he never saw anything to compare it to. The man at risk is the one carrying something genuinely big in his chest, looking at today's ordinary step and deciding it is beneath him. It never was. It was always the actual mechanism by which the vision gets built, one appointed time shaped day at a time. So write the vision down today, plainly enough that it could survive being handed to someone else, and then do one small step in front of you without contempt, not because it's all that you can manage, but because this right here, unremarkable as it looks, is what being faithful with very little actually looks like from the inside. The much comes later. It always does. Don't despise the day you're actually standing in. That's all for today. This is Built Not Felt by the Rice Code. I'll see you all in the next episode.